is yours and just
Okay.
talk.
All right. My name's Aaron Giles. I'm an alcoholic. And by the grace of God, one day at a time, and because of rooms like this and some really, really, really good people like you, I haven't found it necessary to take a drink since August 6th, 1994. And I want to talk a little bit about how me and Darrell first met. It was in Alabama at a sponsee conference. He picked me up from the airport and drove me to the conference. And, we just had such a good time on the way there, getting to know each other and hearing his story, which is similar to mine because he's worked with sober living houses, and I used to own a sober living house in LA. And I worked in treatment for about 5 years, and he's worked in treatment, working with newcomers and coming into the program. And so we had so much in common. But, we also had a lot of spirituality in common, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. Uh, Darrell, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Excuse me. Hi, everybody. My name's Darrell. I'm an alcoholic. Uh, Indianapolis, Indiana is where I call home, and my sobriety date is January 4th, 2014. Really grateful to be here this evening. So happy to see people from my sponsorship family here, my sponsor and, people that I sponsor as well. So, we were talking before the meeting started. And I was just telling, Doug and Raquel, and then there was others on the line, just how much I missed everybody. I just had an amazing week out in Los Angeles and an amazing weekend. And Aaron was with us there, and Chris and Reggie and Rico. Man, Rico brought it. Rico, I've been sitting and thinking about this place, brother, right above my heart. It's been I'll always remember that, Rico. So really, really glad to be here. And I just think that I happen to be at the right place at the right time, if that's the way you want to look at it, because I'm walking through the room and Aaron said, "Hey, you want to be my partner?" I'm like, "Yeah, what are we doing?" Could have said anything, man. I was in. And he said, "This thing with Raquel." And Raquel was standing there and said, "Yeah, absolutely." So thank you, Aaron, for inviting me to have a conversation with
Thank you. All right. Go ahead. Let's start with some. Let me ask you, Darrell. Uh, we agnostics in that chapter, it talks about prejudices that we may have towards God. When you came to the program, did you have any prejudices against God?
you. Yeah, I did. It's interesting as I, today what I would say, and then I'll go back. Today what I will say is I realized that prejudice was against people. And it
Mm,
was people that I was around that were gathering in the name of God or in places where God was talked about. And, I grew up in a parochial environment. I went to a parochial school, and, my family went to church on a regular basis. And yet both of those environments seem to be contradictory towards this loving God that I hear people talk about on Sundays and at other times. And then there was a time, man, where I went through this experience. I would have said it was like a born again experience as an adult. Got really active, in the church. And this is so funny to me because it is a description of my self-centeredness. So I'm teaching Bible classes, I'm leading Sunday school, I'm preaching at times. I thought at one time I wanted to be a pastor. I'm singing in the church and leading some worship and all those things. And our pastor had gone on a call up into to the mountains to pray about whether or not he was going to accept this call to another church. And I thought, okay, they're going to ask me to preach. So I was the most spiritual guy I knew. And, and I saw an elder walking towards me, and I'm like, here it comes. And he said, "Hey, Darrell." And I said, "Yes, Gary." He said, "Would you please, or would you be willing?" And I was getting ready to go, "Oh yeah. Would you be willing to give the children's sermon this week?" Now, we had a part of the service where we would invite children to come up. And I think it's beautiful. There's a book that talks about, you must be like a child coming to the presence of God. But man, for whatever reason, that offended me. And that was like a shove off for me at that time. And I just said, And I was really at this point where I was getting ready to go start using and drinking again. And, because I'd gotten sober and I never kept track of time, but for bits and pieces in this church environment. And then what seemed to happen through my separation from these folks, I began to start looking at all the hypocritical behavior that I saw, in the name of God. And, the scandals, the corruption, the infighting, all those things. And that has nothing to do with God. That has to do with the human condition. And, so when I came to the rooms, what was funny is, my sponsor, asked me about my relationship with God. And I said, I got that piece, man. If that's what you're peddling here, that's probably not going to be enough for me, man. I believe in God. I'm in good shape. And he says, no, I'm not talking about belief. I said, I have faith in God. He said, I'm not talking about belief and faith in God. And he took me to the part in the book where it talks about lack of power is our dilemma. And he said, what we have an opportunity here is to go through a process that will allow you to connect with this power in a conscious way through a variety of actions that will transform your life. And I thought, and he says, well, look, faith and belief. And he gave me this analogy or this example. He said, take some deep breaths for me, Darrell. So I began to do that. And he said, so whenever you're taking those deep breaths, you have faith that there's oxygen available to you right here. And it's, and you believe that each time that you do that, you get some. I'm like, yeah. He goes, so you have faith and believe that there's air here. I'm like, yeah. It's okay. Let's go to the bathroom. I'm going to hold your head underwater. Let's see how long your faith and belief that there's air at the surface is going to matter. So I want to say it to you again. I want you to see how long it's going to take you to realize that your faith and belief that there is air at the surface is going to matter. And that landed with me. And he says, what I'm talking about is getting you to the air. So I came in with lots and lots of old ideas about God. Yeah. What about you, Aaron? What was going on with you when you got to the rooms, man? I mean, we talked the other day, and I had no idea that one time, you did some preaching and things like that. Although you sound, you got that pastoral voice going on, either Barry White imitator, or a DJ or a pastor. I'm like, so what was going on with you guys?
Very white, that's for sure. But yeah, when I came in '86, me and Ralph, we knew each other back in the '80s, and I stayed sober from '86 to '90, and I relapsed. And when I came in, I had in '86, I went through a VA hospital, and I had this evolutionist theory of life. When I was first introduced to the Big Book, there was a clubhouse called 3801 in LA. And there was a guy there. His name was Richard. And Richard used to peddle this book all the time. He was always talking about the Big Book Alcoholics Anonymous, Big Book Alcoholics Anonymous. Him and this other guy named Joe Hawk. And so they were always. And so they, he sat down with me and he told me to pray and ask God to remove the obsession to drink. And I said, well, I really don't think there is a God, because I think religion is the opiate of the masses. And, I believe in evolution, He said, well, just ask God if he is there to reveal himself to you. And that's where I started at. And I asked God to reveal himself to me. And, I went. It's ironic that Ralph's book study is still going on, because that weekend, a weekend or two later, we went to a book study at Ralph's mother's house with him, and Ronnie. It was only a few of us there, Strange. And after that book study, because I was raised in the Nation of Islam. So I had a Islamic belief system and a God that was really rigid, really strict, and you had to follow the rules and and there was no, I didn't know anything about grace or love. I just know, structured prayer, structured time, pray to the east 5 times a day, diet, you can't eat pork, can't chase white women, all this other stuff. But, all this structure, right? And this, but I had no idea of forgiveness, grace, or loving God. And Richard sat me down in the car after that book study and he asked me some questions about forgiveness. And that day I switched gods and I accepted a loving God into my life that day. And I started going to a church with Richard and a lot of people in the fellowship. Leslie, who Ralph's is with right now, she went to that church with us. We all went to this church together. And there was a lot of people in the fellowship at that church. And that pastor didn't have a lot of men there. So he made me a deacon and then he sent me to seminary school and taught me Greek and Hebrew and I relapsed in 90. But when I came back in 90, I ran at the big book really, really hard. And I thought I had a spiritual awakening as a result of working all 12 steps. And there was a guy in our group named Carl, Big Book Carl. And Big Book Carl shared one day that Bill referred to AA as being spiritual kindergarten. And my ego told me that since I had had this spiritual awakening and this pastor had sent me to seminary school and made me a minister, that I was now in spiritual college. I was above, I floated above Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I stopped going to your meetings because I got what I needed from you people. And I started doing church 6-7 days a week. I taught Sunday school. I was over the children's, I did a high school basketball team. Church basketball team. I did, Bible study at my house, a cell group Bible study. I did, I had activities 6-7 days a week in the church, but I wasn't going to meetings because, like I said, I no longer needed spiritual kindergarten. So, I went and did all of that for 2 years. Didn't go to a meeting for 2 years. I got 3.5 years sober again in 1994. And I was set to preach on Men's Day at my church. And the pastor had prepared me. I was preparing my sermon one Friday night for Sunday morning. And the thought hit me that you would really comprehend the word of God if you had a little bit of Mad Dog 2020, just a couple shots, right? And I hadn't been to a meeting in 2 years. So I figured, my alcoholism, like the book said, the problem no longer exists for us. Well, I thought that meant that I no longer had the physical allergy, that the allergy was absolved, that somehow God had removed that from me. And so I went and took a drink, and that drink lasted 6 months, that one drink. And that drink led me to hit the crack pipe one time for the next 6 months. And so it just spiraled down from there, to the point where when I came back in 1994, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt when they sat down and said that I had this allergic reaction, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. I knew that I was an alcoholic and I had the allergy. And I knew that, that I needed to stay in Alcoholics Anonymous, that this was not, it's it may be considered spiritual kindergarten by Bill, but the class, I think somebody said it this weekend. I think Doug said it. I got here when I came back, I was 32 years old and I didn't have a bad childhood. It's like Doug said, I had a long childhood. So I needed to have a long grow up period. You know, I love when he shared that this weekend. I got a long grow up period and I need to grow spiritually. And I love what Carla shared. When I'm restless, irritable, discontent, sober, that's a red flag that I need to expand my spirituality. I need to grow my spirituality. And so that was my prejudgment was that God was going to take my alcoholism away and I would be, you know, white as snow from that point on. Well, he does. I'm recovered. My mind is recovered to the point where I have sanity every day that it's insane for me to take a drink, but I still have a body that's sick. And if I don't grow spiritually, and you said it, you know, and I love the way um, uh, that people talk about the longest distance we travel is 18 inches from the head to the heart. My heart is still, I have to listen to that because if I start listening to this head long enough and I isolate with this head long enough, I'm in trouble, you know. So I can't, I'll accumulate resentments and I'll accumulate fears that just block me from the sunlight of the spirit. So, that was my journey with prejudice. Yeah.
So, how would you describe, the conception of God? I don't want it to be limited, Aaron, because I know that we probably, none of us truly, we have our own conception because we're limited, right?
Right.
But what's going on today with you? So that's how you got here. How has God revealed himself to you, and what are some of the practices that you currently use, in your life, to draw
I'm,
near to God?
I'm not, I think my conception of God, and I tell this to the guys I sponsor down here, wherever, you know, and me and Ralph have talked about this extensively. Wherever I started in belief at God with the second step, it has changed by the time I got to the 12th step. You know, that whole outlook and attitude about God has changed by the time I got to the 12th step. And now I'm finding as the years go on, my conception of God continually changes. I was telling somebody today, I practice today. One of the practices I have is, I believe this. An old timer told me, in, in 92, when they had the riots, right, in LA, he said that the wealthiest, richest place in all of LA never got vandalized during the riots, and that was the library because it holds all the wealth in all of LA because the library is a place where you can learn anything because and so I often, you know, and I'm a believer. I have a library card and I go to the library here in Texas. We got some beautiful libraries, beautiful, and they're quiet and I mean, one of my first addictions happened to be when I was 9, 10 years old living on 60th and in Vermont. You know, it was a lot of gangs over there and so one of my first addictions was I hung out in libraries. I'm a reader. I've been a reader for a long time. I've always had book club memberships or just, I love books and, I do a lot of audio books now, and and I still do some reading, but I, I am a firm believer. If I sit in a library and I tell myself, okay, Aaron, your ego is so large that you know everything. So how much do you know about every sentence and every paragraph in every one of these books? and it's absolutely nothing. I don't know that much. And so it reduces my ego to the point where I can go to God and say, I don't know. Where before I went to God, not with questions, but with answers that I wanted him to answer along with my answers. I wanted, they used to say in AA all the time, I was trying to get God to co-sign my bullshit. And that's what I would do. Try to control the outcome and the results by persuading God to do things my way instead of being open and receptive to the way that God does things and being patient enough to wait on the answers. A good friend of mine in the fellowship, Happy Howard, always says that if you don't know what to do, don't do nothing. And that has served me well. Sometimes it's okay to not do anything. And for a long time, my head was so busy, I thought my body had to be so busy achieving, accomplishing, making things happen. I'm a hustler from back in the day. I have always had jobs in the fellowship where I worked commission only. So I had to get out there and make it happen and all of that. So, it's hard. The most difficult thing for me to do is, you know, what the book says, take it easy. Take it easy. We burn up a lot of energy trying to persuade God to do something that he's already planned to do. It's just not the right time yet. God already got it. You know, it's on the way. Just hold on. Just wait long enough. And while you're waiting, what do you do? Because, the old timers, when I got here, used to say, when one door closes, another one opens. But sometimes there is a hallway. In my sobriety, there's been hallways. And what do you do when you're in the hallway? Well, you keep going to meetings. You keep working with others. You keep sitting down and giving this thing away. You keep growing spiritually. You keep taking your inventory and don't resort to taking everybody in the room's inventory. And you keep doing that and you get through the hallway. And then at the other side, an open door comes. That's been my experience over and over. But and so that has worked for me. Just realizing over and over as I grow in different levels of spirituality, they all start with me not knowing. And I got that from Taoism, the Tao, Tao. I started reading the Tao where it talks about being able to sit and not want for anything, not desire anything, just to be okay with being okay. And I was like, whoa, that sounds like AA. Be okay with being okay. And so I was like, okay. And I just, I've been able to sit and, because I want everything. You know what I'm saying? And I'm an instant gratification guy. I want it now. I want everything right now. And so for me to sit and be okay with being okay is a lot. That's a lot. So, those are some of my practices. And, I practice meditation in the morning. I do pray. And, I thank God throughout the day. And I'm one of those that, my first sponsor, Don Newcomb, used to say all the time, you got to say, thy will be done, thy will be done, thy will be done, and so I would say that 50 times a day. And then, my meditation, I'm not one of those guys that could sit and just, in a Zen state and be okay. I do inspiration. The book talks about we will not be inspired at all times, but I do inspiration. I like inspiration. So I listen to a YouTube channel almost every morning called Above Inspiration. I listen to guys like Tony Robbins. I listen to a lot of guys like that. And they inspire me. They motivate me, to There's this Pastor Eric. He always has some good motivation that I listen to. But these wake me up in the morning. I believe, now I do believe wholeheartedly, I got to attack my mind before my mind attacks me. So I wake up and I'm on it. I'm on my inspiration. I'm on my, you know, my stuff to keep me headed in the right direction. What about you? What are your spiritual practices there, Darrell?
It's funny. Many of you know I just spent 9 days out in Los Angeles, and I realize it's taken me a few days of being home to just process the experiences that I had, and that is a description of how my time here has looked. I remember first getting here, and I think Carla described this, because she's a dancer. That, when you first are learning to dance, and I can relate to this because I'm a musician. You're keeping time, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then this thing going where you're dancing different types of styles, and the tempo may pick up, but there's that discipline, that time, and you're counting off. That reminded me of coming here and people saying, hey, come to meetings, work the steps. And there's this progression that happens, that the numbers fall away, but now you're dancing,
Mm,
right? Or you're making music. And in that place, there's freedom and there's this peace. And, I always feel like I'm lighter. I'm, uh, I'm lifted above the normal things that would, to be bothersome to me when I'm in that place when I'm playing music. So along the way, what I've learned here and what Alcoholics Anonymous has provided for me has been a launching pad into some other areas of exploration and interest. So I've studied different great faiths and teachers of Eastern religion, Hinduism and Buddhism. All those things have been of value. You were talking about not having attachment. So meditation is something that, as I describe my time as a boy and a young man in the church, meditation was seen as new age, or almost something was wrong with that. And yet what I would say today is, service and meditation have been vehicles to God that have been profound for me. And, I spent some time with Matthew Mitchell in California. We were talking about meditation, and something that he said, I went, yeah, that's my experience. He talked about meditation. He hasn't had the bliss that he's heard some people describe, or he hasn't seen colors that some people have described. And he goes, but what happens for me is because I do practice meditation, the rest of my day benefits. So this sitting quietly, and you talk about getting to your mind. What I realized today is that I'm just not all my thoughts. My mind is crazy at times, but what I've been able to learn to do, I think God is in that pause. So I love that pause, when agitated, because agitation comes before anger and rage, and doubt comes before fear, or being overwhelmed. And so that pause, when I'm practicing that pause in meditation, when the craziness is going on, and then bringing things back to the center, or allowing things to just kind of come back to the center, has allowed me to move that way during the day. And that has allowed me to be more patient, more compassionate, more open-minded, more loving. Because I'm a guy that, I'm biased for action, and I want to get some things done. And, and I think uh, I think I have a decent thinker, and I want to handle things at the intellectual level. And man, that's where this whole thing around selfishness and self-centeredness really gets me in trouble, because I'm convinced that I know what the answer is to things. And I'm also convinced that I know how to show up in any different way. We talk about being chameleons, showing up in any different way so that I can kind of impact or influence how you think about me. Right. So all that stuff, and I find, all that movement and all that craziness that goes on, I kind of embrace some of that today. You know, I tell you, and I'm jumping around because I'm still processing, but one of the things that was so beautiful for me, my time with many of you in Los Angeles, and it began, spending time with Ralph, is I stayed at Ralph's place and I stayed in his mother's room. And there were times where I just sat in her room and reflected on the love that was in that place, her impact on Ralph, Ralph's impact on me and many of us on this call. And I felt like it was a gift. It was a gift for me to experience this place. And then, one day Ronnie came by, and then one day Reggie came by. And and I listened to all of these guys. Listened to Ralph for years before I ever met him. It's so funny. I found something I sent to Candace in 2021, so I'm just making a mental note, Ralph, to talk to you about that. But these, as I sat there, some mornings in meditation, it really felt like I was getting an opportunity to kind of see behind the veil, if you will. And what I mean by that is,
Yeah.
I just saw this love. I just saw this life, in certain corners. Ralph would say, "Oh, let me tell you a story about, looking up the street on this," or we went by, um, you know, the Figueroa Club and things like that. So the disciplines, my willingness to stay persistent with some of these disciplines like prayer, meditation, and this 11th step review in the evening, those things now are moving along in a way that I understand more what on 164 Bill said, hey, you only know a little. We only know a little. So I really realized there's only a little bit in that book, and yet I get to experience more and more as I continue to do things, remove the stuff that typically get in my way. And I had written this, and I used to think that this whole notion of experiences, or not experiences, but lifetime trips, a trip of a lifetime. I always used to look at that as where I was going. Man, I'm going to get to Paris. I'm going to get to Hong Kong. And those are incredible places to visit. But as that week went on, and I found myself just sitting and being with people that I love, and people who have welcomed me and pouring into me, I went, nah, man, the trip of a lifetime is the people that you're with. And I really think that what I was getting to experience is that part in our book, which is now deep down within us, is the fundamental idea of God, that when we are connected, and we have this way to get connected here, and this is another way we do that, that when we're sitting with this other fundamental idea, the other person's idea of God, that something happens there that can just be incredible, man. I mean, I think that's why being in the present moment is such a big deal. Because in the present moment is the only time I've been able to experience, hope or forgiveness or healing, or, this transformation thing we talk about. I love, Ralph's talking about living life through the windshield, but, experiencing it in the rear view. I look back, like, so I'm looking back at some experiences in my life now through my current experience that then changes the whole game. And it just keeps me it makes me want to keep coming back and having these conversations. Keep coming back and seeing what God's doing in your life. And I don't know. It's hard for me to articulate, but I came back, and I had such an amazing time with Doug and Carla. And I just thought, this is it. I'm seeing God. I'm seeing God. So we started with prejudices, right? And that's one of the things, I'm working with the guy right now, and this guy's got, I work with a lot of guys in the criminal justice system and, in DOC and county and, coming off the street. And this guy got a huge Confederate flag on his arm. And man, that's the place that gets me the most. If somebody says, what is your prejudice against? Like, I would describe to you, um, an individual, and that's one of the signs of something that's really not good for me. And yet, you know, what I'm experiencing with him is, I mean, somebody just scratched that on his skin. This guy is really looking for hope, and I can see God in him, and I'm grateful for that because there would have been a day, there wouldn't have been a day where I wouldn't have given him, I would have given him no time, and I would have walked away with some prejudice against that man. And also I would have judged him and prosecuted him for things I don't even know about him. So prayer, meditation have been, game changers for me, and more meditation. I don't pray any longer to pull the slot machine with God, too much. I mean, I have no problem praying for things, for my family and for people I care about, for sure. But this sitting has just led me to this whole other deal that I think Carla might use the phrase big mystery. And I'm like, that's it. And there's this big mystery. That's what's going on.
Wow. You answered my other question. I was getting ready to ask you, is there a time in your sobriety or a season in your sobriety where you felt especially close to God? And how did that change you?
Let me do it this way, Aaron, because so my wife and I had known one another for 50 years. We've been together for 27, with the exception of 2 years. And at 8 years sober, for a variety of reasons, and I had, floated away from the program from some. My sponsor at the time wasn't, he was mentally going through some challenges, and our relationship had changed. And I walked away from, 23-year, 25-year, 23-year marriage. And just said, I'm done, and it had taken a handful of years to get there. And it's so interesting as I look back now. And I was at this place where I'm convincing all these people in my life why that was okay. And and it's the delusion. Ralph talks about his blind spots. I think about my blind spots in that. But I think too about this grace in our lives, because I'm like, man, I should have picked up a drink, or I should have picked up a drug during that time, if there was a time. And yet what happened is these people that love me came and this guy said, dude, you better get back to a meeting, man. And he started coming and getting me, just like I was a newcomer, didn't have my license, when guys would come and get in the car. And that process. And I was so angry at everybody at my home group. So I thought, this isn't like, Cheers, where everybody knows your name. Nobody's calling me saying, hey, how you doing? How you doing? And yet I had told them I'm doing just fine. So it was this deal, and again, I just can't, I mean, you guys influence me. I share what you share with me, and this notion, Rafa said, the impact of God on me was sudden when he talked about those, those baggy pant angels, those dirty faced angels come. And I look at these things and I'm like, yeah, that impact on me when this guy came and said, and I was very, very, very active in Alcoholics Anonymous, and, and managing hundreds of beds in treatment facilities and recovery houses and all this stuff. And yet I was in this place where I'm just further and further away. And I'm describing being further away from fellowship, but what I'm really telling you is I'm further away from God.
Hmm.
And God didn't go anywhere, right? It's here. So I'm able to look back on those times now and to see the grace in my life once again, for the fellowship to save me. And maybe that's another reason why I had this heightened sense of gratitude now. I mean, I've known Ralph I've listened to Ralph for a long time, but just connected with him about a year ago. And I said this to some of you before. I thought I was getting Ralph. I had no idea I was getting all of you. And so there's this experience of gratitude where this whole new thing going on with me. Um, that is, and I'm just at this place of, I'm just free, man. I'm just free. I'm free. This, you can't, I don't know about you. I can't not tell you about what God's doing in my life, man. I can't do that, because it's so profound as I look at these times in my life where I was just I felt completely lost and in trouble, wanted to die, sitting in jail, all the stuff, and here's these reminders again, this loving hand, and here you come along, and the little things. Yeah, I'm in a season right now where it's amazing for me. I feel blessed. This meeting's a blessing. Raquel's a blessing. All my Tarek's on the call. I mean, there's so many people, Chris, and all my Indianapolis friends, and I mean, I just can go down the list, and I'm like, I can turn this into a gratitude meeting for all the people that I'm looking at. And yeah, I'm
Good deal.
grateful. I'm grateful.
Well, I must say the season that changed me the most in my entire sobriety had to be, and where I felt the actual presence of God personally, because the book talks about how God will not make too hard of terms with those that seek him. And he is capable of revealing himself to us. And I've had tiny miracles that I thought were tiny at the time, small miracles. But the season when I got the phone call 4 years ago, uh, I was sitting here, I'm doing everything, taking meetings into the treatment center every Monday night. I'm sponsoring guys. I'm, I'm being of service to my home group, uh, service commitments there. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I'm 27 years sober and life is going well. Not a cloud on the horizon. And I get the phone call from her, my son's girlfriend. And she says, he's laying in a pool of blood. Somebody shot him. I said, Joshua? She said, yeah, and the phone disconnected. And I said, oh my God. And you said it, deep down within every man, woman, and child's a fundamental idea of God. In the final analysis, that's where we have to find him. It may be blocked off by calamity. It might be blocked off by trauma, might be blocked off by resentment or fear. But I was unblocked that day. I was unblocked. And I said, God, what am I going to do deep down inside? And it wasn't a loud, audible voice. It was a tiny whisper that just said, I got your boy. Your boy is with me now. He's in the presence of everlasting love. And she called back and she said they shot him 2 times in the back of the head and he's dead. And I said, I know. And I hung up the phone with her. She's in tears. And I said, I'm going to call somebody to come where you are. Tell me where you are. And she told me, and I called Pastor Walt, who's a good friend of ours in the fellowship. And I said, Walt, somebody murdered my boy and he's on 59th and Western. And Walt said, I was right in the middle of something. I'm dropping everything right now. I'm headed over there. I'm going to take care of the body. I'm going to take care of everything for you. You don't have to worry about nothing. And that's the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I called Diane, my ex-wife, made the phone calls. The police called me. One of the crash unit guys got there on the scene. He saw all of my son's tattoos because he got tattoos all around his neck, all around his arms, and he got the full sleeve. I mean, he got tattoos on his chest everywhere. And he asked me, he said, "Man, is your son a gang member?" And I said, "No, my son was out of the life. He was a carpenter. He worked on the SoFi Stadium. He worked on a lot of places in LA. He was not in that life anymore." And the crash officer said, "Man, he says, my condolences on your loss." He said, "Man, I am so sorry you lost your son today. And we're going to do and find out who murdered your son." He almost promised that he was going to find out. And within 3 days, they found the murderer of my son through videotape evidence. But in that moment right there, God met me where I was. And I felt it. And my little girlfriend was in the room with me. And it was so powerful in the room. She fell down to her knees and started praying right then when I told her he got murdered. And it was like, I just had to get down on my knees and pray. It was so powerful. And I knew that the presence of God was in that place at that moment. And now 3 days later, I had a dream where I had this body in a industrial area and I had it duct taped to a chair of this faceless body. I didn't see the kid who murdered my son, but I was branding him for three days. And God came to me in a dream and he said, "If you continue to harm one of my children like this, that you're going to go into a darkness I won't be able to pull you out of." And I branded that kid for another 4 days. I woke up in a cold sweat. I called Ralph, and Ralph told me about the set aside prayer, and I got to get over this to forgiveness, And I just couldn't forgive the murderer of my son. And we talked about this, me and Ralph. When I forgive, it doesn't absolve anybody for what they did and how they hurt me. It's not absolution for them. What it is peace for me. And I could not forgive because I wanted this man to pay for his crime and what he took from me. And I couldn't imagine. And I talked to Pat Parker about this and I started crying. Pat said, she said, "Aaron, God's will may be for this man to go to jail and become the greatest minister in jail that God ever used to touch other hearts. And you got to forgive him. And you got to acknowledge the grace that God has given you. And you got to give him the same kind of grace." And I wasn't willing to give that kind of grace. And then I talked to Ralph. Ralph said to do this meditation where I have the young man on one side of the table and I'm on the other side of the table. And God is at the head of the table. And see, and God, I read off all my charges against this man to God, see what God says. And so I did that meditation and I read off all my charges to God about what this man had taken from me. And all he did is pull the trigger. That's all he did. Now, and God started reading off all of what he's given me grace on. all of what he's forgiven me for, all of what I've done over the past, all of what, and the list just went on and on and on. And I experienced the presence of God in that forgiveness like never before. And what it's taught me is I've not been in through anything like that in the last 4 years. And I've had, betrayals. I've had all kind of insincerities and lies and all kind of stuff that I've had to forgive of people because people have faults. They make a lot of mistakes, and I'm in Texas where we got a lot of people shit, so it's a lot of mistakes here, uh, but forgiveness has been my main tool here that I've used to just experience the presence of God on a regular basis. Because it's one of those things that I have to constantly inventory and constantly look at, am I, and my first sponsor, Don Newcomb, used to say it, and I never really understood when he would say this, but he would say all the time that in order to stay sober long-term in Alcoholics Anonymous, one day at a time, everything that stands between me and you has to be gone. And what stands between me and you? It's my fears. It's my resentments. It's my character flaws. All these things that I have to look at so I can have a relationship like you talked about with the people I love in my life. I could go to LA and embrace these people and love on them, and they can love on me, and we can, and there's nothing standing between us. There's nothing there because all of that stuff is gone. So that's been my experience with the presence of God. So
Beautiful, Aaron. Thank you, man.
yeah.
I'd like to ask you a question, Aaron. This is the time of the meeting when I interfere in a way, and then probably give people time to think about their questions. But as you were talking, there were a couple of things that I was thinking about. Number one, when you said that you
Are you there?
yeah, I am right here.
Okay.
It's hard. It's strange not to hear me talking, right?
Yeah.
You said, I know, you no longer have questions for God or something like that. In the beginning of your talk, you said that the way that you approach God is you wanted your answers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that made me wonder if you don't have any more questions for God. That's number one. And the other question I have for you is, if we were to extend grace to others, the way that grace has been extended for us, how selfish you think may be, or how necessary you think it may be to extend grace to oneself? Those are my questions. And if you
Extend
guys have,
grace
to oneself,
to oneself.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I take a look at my own selfishness and self-centeredness, and just by going through the columns, I experience over and over, and I do columns. I know somebody was talking about that at the at the Woodstock West. They don't, and that's fine. I do them, and I get to the fourth column, and it shows me my humanity. Infallible. I'm fallible. For a long time, pride told me I was infallible, but I am fallible as a human being. So when I see my humanness, my humanity, and part of being human is I am not perfect. I am imperfect. And when I embrace my imperfections, and I think that is showing myself grace because for a long time I went by what I thought based on delusions and illusions of what a man or a person is supposed to be. I don't know where I got this standard. I don't know where I got this idea. I don't know where I got it. I don't know where it all started yet. But uh, each one of us, and the fifth step when we get honest, and it talks about how doctors and psychiatrists don't really want to deal with us because we're never honest. We're never, we aren't, we have an image. I do image management. I go into image management, what I think you want to see, what I think you want me to be, what I think image management. And so when I'm human, when I'm embracing my imperfections, I can give myself grace. Um, and the fact that, I go to God, um, when I say I go to God without questions, I'm saying I'm going to God without questions about when he's going to do things,
Mm.
why he does things, how he does things. One thing that I have good experience with is being in the Marine Corps 6 years. I know that you don't go to the commanding general and you can ask him what time we have to be on the flight. What time is the boat leaving? Uh, where is the mission going to be held? One thing you cannot ask the commanding general is why are we going on the boat? Why are we going on this mission? Why are we attacking the enemy? That is a question between generals. So there's some questions that I can ask God, like, you know, what does it take for me to surrender more to you? What does it take for me to be more in your will? But asking him why he does what he does is futile. There's too many variables for my little pea brain to understand. God is working out thousands, hundreds, and probably thousands of variables all every second of the day. I can't understand it. He's answering prayers right now from all around the world, all at once. I can't understand that. That's beyond my comprehension. So, you know, Ralph says it all the time. I didn't need a bigger God when I got here. I needed a smaller Aaron, a smaller ego. And so when I say I don't have questions, there's certain questions I just cannot ask God because I wouldn't understand the answer. It's beyond my
Mm.
conception.
Thank you so much. That is good. We have Ralph with a question. Ralph, can you mute yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is Ralph White. I'm an alcoholic. Gentlemen, thank you, both of you, for your insights and your transparency and your honesty and just for a great meeting. I got a question. So on this business of God, and we've been talking about relationship, or you guys have been talking about relationship and concepts. And then there's another aspect, and that's this playing God for both of you. What pitfall, where is the area that you find is still the one that if you're not careful, you still get caught up in the playing God? What areas do you find yourself? You know, that's a variation of the question I ask both you gentlemen a lot. What's your kryptonite? And in the area of playing God, where is the one that you find yourself? It still is a difficult challenge to not.
Thanks for the question, Ralph. For me, there's a couple areas, and sometimes, it fluctuates, but financial insecurity and relationship with my son.
Mm,
And, the financial insecurity is probably around a lot of the guilt and the disappointment and shame I have in myself, because there's been times where I've been a high earner, and then lots of bad decisions. I try to be cute and say I snorted Bolivia, and all those kind of things. And so there are just times today where I just want to manage it instead of saying, no, God, we've talked about this a number of times, and I have a 100% success rate. God, get me through everything. So yet I want to sit here and dwell on this. And so apparently, the student is not done with that lesson. And the other thing is, my son, and when I'm typically in that place, it's because I'm concerned that isn't going the way that I think it ought to go. Instead of me moving aside and really responding or looking at him as God's child. When I'm doing that and I'm looking at him as the beloved, I can do nothing but celebrate him and support him and love him, instead of have to critique him and question him and all those things. So it's the same patterns for me in a couple areas of my life that are just giving me the most anxiety. Uh, and I would imagine that it comes from a place of wanting it to do well in both places, but it's that's not the way it shows up. So those are the areas, and I continue to work with those. And
I would have to say, I still have a big problem with control. I want to control and dictate what goes on in this family. As far as with the ex-wife, I want to control what goes on with my daughter, with my sons, and letting go of that control has been, um, you know, d- Darrell mentioned it. God is in the pause, and I've had to pause a lot, because if I say what I think, um, it's all fear based. It's all fear based because it's my inability to control a situation. I'm still like the actor. I want to run the whole show, forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, the rest of the players in my own way. And I cannot control anyone else. And I have to pause when my daughter calls me and even though she wants input, there are certain things that I just have to pause and not respond out of fear. And I have to respond out of, what's best for her to find out what's best for her to find out which way is the best, way to go and lead her into, going to God and finding out in her heart of hearts which way is the best way to go. And then, you know, I, I have, a real problem with, like I said, it's been, practicing on a regular basis, um, and being consistent. Consistency and, these are my kryptonites, just being consistent on an ongoing basis in whatever I'm doing, whether it's, the business that I'm working on right now, whether it's, being consistent in other people's lives, and not, shirking responsibilities. Consistency is something that, because I've always been inconsistent in my own life. Showing up for me was inconsistent. Showing up, and I don't mean that selfishly, but I mean in self-care and eating habits and working out. These things I've always been inconsistent in. And so I'm trying to be more consistent now. Um, and so those are my kryptonites.
Mm.
When you get older, you got to watch what you eat, man. That diabetes ain't no joke. You know what I'm saying? I'm watching people die from heart disease and diabetes, so I have to be consistent in my, you know, in my eating habits.
Mhm. Is if anybody has a question, this is the time to, if you have a question or a comment, please, I encourage you to raise your hand. And while you do that, I just, I want to touch upon a couple of things that both of you said. Darrell was talking about this idea that, for what I understand, right? For what, like in a general way, what I understand is that it is easier for you to feel the presence of God in your relationships with people, and I think that's just absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
it's a wonderful thing. One of those that I do believe that you are graced with. It's we all have our little tools and the little ways that we are equipped, and I can see that. And you, Aaron. This whole idea of forgiveness for something, I wanted to say the word anti-natural, right? It's always like, wow, something like it works against all law of logic sometimes, right? But I think it was just beautiful. Yeah. So,
Law of logic. Well, I was taught in kindergarten tit for tat. So,
mm,
Raquel, I was taught that if somebody hit you, you hit them back. If somebody talk about you, you talk back about them. So forgiveness did not come easy. It's against every part of every grain of my teaching from a young age up. It's just that tit for tat doesn't look good on a mature man. It
how
does
about
not.
a mature woman? No, I'm joking.
Nor a
Uh,
mature woman.
Listen, no, it was beautiful. The whole conversation we listened to this night, tonight, just so beautiful, fluid, alive,
Mm,
practical.
mm,
Not up there, but down here, right? Like Bill W. said, we're going to keep our head right up there in with God, but our feet firmly planted on earth. So I think that's what I heard today from both of you. It was an honor, a privilege. Um, it was a gift for all of us to be listening to you tonight, guys. And I love you with all my heart. And I want to thank you again. If anybody else, one more chance for a comment. 1, 2, 3. Okay, recording can stop, and I'm going to close the meeting.